So I believe we're going live. Guys, this is me quarterbacking Restream. This is our live streaming tool. So I hope it all works. And drop it in the chat right now if you're coming, where you're coming in from, what part of the world you're coming in from, what time is it over there. We've got a good one for you today. We're going to start in about a minute or so with my friend Bernard. I actually was I did a webinar with him last week. I was like, hey, just come do a webinar with us this week. And we kind of operate in the same circles. And we've been kind of just talking about how before we kick this off, how the future of work kind of seems like a video game. So maybe we can get into that. But we're going to be talking about ranking in the age of AI. Okay, the old stuff that's new again, the new stuff that is new. Software as we see it is software, in trouble, and software as it helps SEO and marketing and kind of maybe contrarian takes we have on things too. And so last week when we did this, it was much more of a conversation. And Bernard, last week I did like 3 webinars or 3 like presentations or 3 like I did a couple like speaking things. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna try going completely raw with no slides at all, and I think it worked out. And anyway, all that to say, Bernard. So Bernard, I'm gonna do a quick intro for you, and you can intro yourself as well. So he's a friend who runs ClearScope, awesome SEO software, and I would say they've been ahead of the competitors for a while. Actually, someone that we are. Oh, do I need to add you to the team? Looks like you disappeared. Why did Bernard disappear? What the heck? Add to stream. Okay. Yeah. Well.
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah, someone moved you backstage. Sorry about that. So anyway, all that to say, I've known Bernard for a while, and they've been a good player in the space, and even someone we've interviewed recently that we're bringing on in about, I would say, in a month or so. She actually cited that she loves using ClearScope. So all that being said, Bernard, do you want to introduce yourself? Anything you want to add to that?
No, just been in the SEO game for longer than I would like to admit, probably around the 2013 era. So coming up on 12, 13 years of practicing, living, breathing SEO, just seeing the whole landscape really shift from links to PBNs to quality content to user engagement signal, and now we're entering the foray of AI. And I think it's one of the most fascinating fields that's so fast changing, right? If you think about any of the OG marketing channels, it's like email marketing's about the same, social media is about the same, but SEO is like, every other year, some pretty crazy stuff happens.
So I mean, with this conversation, I mean, maybe we can start because you talked about PBNs, we talked about links, we talked about quality content, right? And so maybe we can just start off with talking about what's old that tends to work really well today. Because there's a lot of people coming into this AEO game, this GEO game, and they're saying they feel like they've discovered something new with listicles. Oh my God, you got to do listicles. Oh my God, you got to do guest blog posts, right? And so you and I, we've been playing this game for a little bit. So I think there's a lot of confusion today. So let's just kind of get clear on what's the old stuff that works. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, links, PR, right? This stuff is really old. What PageRank was originally built on still works for the era of artificial intelligence, because we need to trust the AI models to recommend good sources, good citations, and have high quality content. And what better way than links, PR? What do you think?
I think okay, listicles work. Okay, listicles meaning that a lot of people a year ago or so, everyone was spamming listicles, right? The best SEO software company, best digital marketing agency, and they're kind of just spamming their own websites and leveraging their domain authority for that. And they thought they had discovered something new, not new. Now the LLMs are like, oh, okay, it's pretty easy to see that you're publishing on your own website and you're favoring yourself. And Google's always known this is the game, right? It's like, oh, now people are like, oh, you got to do PR, you got to get links to add to your domain rating, but also at the same time, you have to publish on other people's blogs. So now I have agencies, and I do this the same with other agencies, where we kind of exchange with each other on these listicles, right? And so link building is still going to be around. I think links are still a very strong signal even in 2026. And I think more importantly, you and I as SEOs in the very beginning, it's like, oh, I should go reach out to your website, Bernard, and I should go try to get a link. But no, that's the very beginning. You should try to build a relationship, because like what Bernard and I have developed is actually a relationship over time where we actually have met in person. There's multiple angles to work with each other, and then you actually learn that that's actually how you do business.
It's true. It's true. And as you were talking, the other thing that's that still exists, that is still relevant, is technical SEO. I don't know about the validity of the rumor of LLMs.txt. Maybe you have some thoughts on that, but it's just really simple, right? If the AI agents cannot crawl, render, or understand your content in a timely manner, then yeah, you're not going to be surfaced. You're not going to be visible on these different AI responses.
Yeah. Who do you think? I mean, maybe if we can give some people some practical examples here, maybe stuff you're doing at ClearScope, or what clients are doing too. But who do you think is doing AEO well? Because last week I gave a couple examples of like, hey, CNBC does this over here, or so and so does FAQs, right? Like, what are you guys doing? Maybe some customers that you can share that are doing.
Yeah,
things.
I mean, I think the nuts and bolts, right? Kind of the key takeaway sections at the top. Too long, don't read. Kind of providing a few sentences about what the article is about. We've been seeing just correlation. I'm not going to say it's like, okay, do that for everything, but it seems to help with getting your content cited within AI models. I think that what we've been testing as well is video, like native original video, right? Whether that's the author of the post that's just sitting down and saying, hey, I wrote this, and here's what to get out of that, and embedding a short, like less than 1 minute clip. The reasoning behind that is, again, to basically prove that the piece of content that you've created is original, unique, human, at least assisted stuff. So I think those things come to mind. I've heard of a variety of other interesting tactics with varying degrees of validity, but this is kind of I think the Metehan example comes to mind. He was the one that popularized the idea of replacing the normal share buttons, like you click on share to Facebook or share to X, with like AI buttons where it's like summarize this on ChatGPT or summarize this on Perplexity. And he's claimed that he's found some reasonable success there, although I'm kind of skeptical about the longevity of that kind of a tactic.
Yep. I mean, if I were to kind of simplify this, I mean, you're trying to make things easier for the search engines or the answer engines to scan, right? So the key takeaway sections, the FAQs, maybe you're talking about like the bullets that you have on the top, or like even clear subheadings, right? That type of stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, lots of people do that now, to the point where, and I guess one of the themes that we're talking about here is what is old is new, and what is new is old, and it's really a tale as old as time, right? Somebody finds out some loophole in the system, and then they exploit it, and then everybody starts doing it, and then models suppress the validity of that signal, and then you get kind of this full circle of what's old is new and what's new is old. And so I think we're getting back to that whole like, okay, we'll answer the question as quickly as possible. That's best for users, it's best for agents. And providing summarizations of key takeaways is also good for chunking and passage similarity, and just fill that with as many like entities as you can, and that's going to be good. And I wonder like what the models are going to do once everybody starts doing that.
Yeah. Usually, so actually, maybe if you can describe what chunking is for those that don't know.
Yeah, so chunking is the fact that when models respond to users for prompts, what they have to do is they have to look at their training data, so their fundamental knowledge of what they believe to be the topic, and then they do grounding with Google search, which is to say that then the models want to make sure that the content that they're about to give to the end user is factual, it's correct, it's up to date. throughout all of this, what the model is doing is that it's selectively looking at pieces of content, more specifically paragraphs or sentences that contain the right entities that will build your particular answer. So chunking then is this idea that models are essentially looking at not your entire content, but passages, paragraphs, and sentences within your content that will then help them produce the most relevant and accurate answer to the end user.
Got it. Thanks for that. What do you think now? I mean, okay, I started in SEO. I'm assuming you started in SEO, but we've learned always over time that you can't just rely on SEO as a channel. But it seems like the people who are scared the most right now are people who have just relied on SEO. So how are you diversifying, or should you even be diversifying right now away from SEO? Like, how are you thinking about it?
I mean, I think the moral of the story is that if you have a channel that produces, 30, 40, 50% of your overall customer acquisition, it's always safer to diversify from that. So SEO has conveniently been a very strong channel for a variety of different industries, business models, and that's why it's been such a lucrative channel to pursue. But now more than ever, I think we're seeing the cracks form in terms of at least the traffic component of what SEO offers to brands. So I would say, I think what we see a lot of people turning towards is their own communities, like walled garden communities. I think this is like private Slack channels. You had, Traffic Think Tank, which got bought by SEMrush, and HubSpot bought like The Hustle, right? Basically, a lot of these different software companies are recognizing that communities are very important, because communities will then trade notes, discuss best practices, and in theory recommend their platforms, tools, and services. So I think communities is probably one of the more emerging channels, and that as Reddit as like the go-to biggest community, but we're seeing a lot more fragmentation, whether it's circle.so or, these different private Slack channels, private WhatsApp groups, even just like iMessages between, a network of, really smart people. And I think that's kind of in a lot of ways what people are defending themselves against, because we're seeing just this huge inundation of AI slop that is just pervading, social media. It's pervading written content. And the biggest problem with it is that you just don't know what's true, factual, and if the original author even had anything to do with, that piece of content.
So when I look at our marketing strategy right now, it's YouTube's a part of it, right? There's webinars work, to your point, live events work, whether it's speaking at a conference and then hosting a little dinner afterwards, or like workshops and things like that. And obviously like email works as well. And so there's a handful of things in our stack, and I think there's building products and giving splintering things off and giving the features away for free. What's working well for you right now?
Yeah, I think to just summarize what I feel like I've heard you say, it's credibility. It's things that exude credibility, trust, and respect from the people that you're trying to get in front of, right? YouTube works for us because we're here live, streaming or recording, and the audience knows that this is not some AI slop that's like, deeply wrong or, whatever. Email works because at the point you've subscribed to, our newsletter, that means you trust us and you want to receive information from us. And so I think what we're seeing work is just a lot of the high trust, high credible things. Live events, of course, you cannot have robotics replace that, at least not anytime in the short run.
Yeah. And I guess I'm curious too, like I'll share a story with you. The question, the prompt here is what happens to SEO work in general? And I'm not talking about individuals, but just work in general. So last Friday, I was talking to one of our internal SEOs about our internal marketing strategy. So we have pretty good domain rating or domain authority on our website, Single Brain. And I was like, okay, well, I want to make more of these programmatic pages, especially because OpenAI is coming out with ChatGPT ads, right? I was like, for over a year, I wanted these pages on my sites, like ChatGPT ads, ChatGPT ads agency, ChatGPT services, right? Ad services, like all these permutations that you can make. And we hadn't gotten it up. And these are simple programmatic pages, okay? And so I went to him. I was like, hey, like, how long is it going to take to get these pages up? We want to make sure that we strike when the iron's hot and these pages are up, so we're capturing that value. Ideally, we would have done this months ago, right? And he's like, well, this is Friday. This is already late Friday. He's like, it's going to take me till Monday to do the keyword research and then until Friday to get the articles up, which is already pretty fast, right? Maybe in the old world. But, I was like, you know what? F that. So I opened up Manus. Okay. I didn't even use any tool or just the general agent. I opened up Manus. I was like, hey, Manus, I want to rank for, I want to attack this ChatGPT ads agency type permutations for my website, singlegrain.com. That was the prompt. The BS prompt, okay, whatever prompt, okay. And then what it did was it actually did the research for me. And I said, hey, I want these. I have plural templated pages like services, agencies, whatever. Those are more listicles. And then I have singular like agency. So I have 2 templates. I was like, I wanted to follow these 2 templates over here. I want you to give me a couple keyword examples and then show me 2 examples. Okay. It literally did that. And then it made 150, a parallel process, 150 of them. I spot checked a couple. I'm like, dude, I just did $45,000 of work in less than like 30 minutes, right? And so my point of saying this is like my team's on top of it. It's this guy is like he's got other stuff to do, so there's no shade on him at all. And in fact, like he's seen the light on this now. But what do you think happens to SEO work now? Like you have a product that helps people with the work. Like what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is very interesting because I think analyst level work, right? This is okay, let's export all the Google Search Console queries, and then let's look at keyword cannibalization, or let's prune underperforming pages, or let's detect which pages have technical errors and how important it is to fix whatever it is on those specific pages. I think all of that work just out of the box, like you are mentioning, is really easily done with your typical like AI agent. I think that component is definitely being replaced, automated the most. However, I am not sure, at least currently, if the models are good at the strategy, right? You can't just dump a domain in and then just be like, fix my SEO problems, right? They're going to make a little bit too many assumptions on what that means. And then B, it's also not really, at least currently, replacing the work, like the actually going through and changing and updating and fixing all of the issues and the problems, right? I mean, yes, it will give you like outputs, but if you're working within any CMS, right, it's not so easy to just copy and paste in an updated article. You got to copy and paste it. You got to do the internal linking. You got to make sure the imagery is up to date. It's a lot of manual work to still go back into, your site and make all of the changes. But the analyst level stuff, right? This is like, Screaming Frog for technical stuff, keyword insights for topic clustering, all these different permutations. I think we're seeing agents and AI really shine in that particular ecosystem. And I have a feeling that it's going to be the CMS, the content management system, like the Webflow and the HubSpot and the WordPress, that is really going to be where the value like happens, because that's like within the workflows, right? I'm imagining this future world where you just interact with your like WordPress, right? And you just like keep these 10 pages up to date, and you have, read, write, edit permissions to do whatever you want to the page. I think that that's actually like the real like gain, and I'm sure tons of people are working on this, including WordPress and CM and Webflow and all these different things. But I think that that's the future state of like, okay, this is now 10x better, right? I think replacing analyst work, being able to do things faster, at least from an analysis perspective, is good. But I think the real game changer comes when CMSs, whether it's through plugins or natively, can just kind of run things on their own. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's we like to call this the execution layer. So we have single grain, but I have the domain single brain, and single brain is like it'll come up with the insights, and then that's nice and all that, but like, can you just do it for me? And I think a lot of software is probably going in that direction. I also don't think I don't think that the high agency people are going to get replaced, right? I think it's what's going to happen is these people are going to your point earlier. We were talking about having playing this like a video game where you have like your agents kind of bringing the work to you and saying this is done, right? And it becomes more virtual, like you're wearing a VR like VR glasses. I think that's going to happen. So I think this is only going to give us more time to do high leverage work. And so the example I just gave you with Manus, which is again like a general agent, and you can use whatever tool you want for those of you listening, I think is just the tip of the iceberg. And that's why at our company, which I kind of mentioned to you last week, but our mandate is that everyone needs to be proficient with Claude Code within the next 6 months or so, or we just can't move on, right? And that is a big ask, but I think we kind of just talked about the ability to do a lot more than you're actually capable of right now. Before we were talking here, like maybe 20 minutes before, I was in Claude Code. So yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, how are you defining proficiency in Claude Code?
Yep. So we actually, I actually have a complete table on the different levels. On you have capable, you have oh sorry, you have unacceptable, capable, and then you have adaptive, and then you have transformative. So transformative would be like you are actually building tools. Like we have a tool called the Deal Reviver, which will scan all of our lost deals in HubSpot over the last whatever time period, and it'll actually craft messages custom to that person, and also look at recent funding news or anything that might have happened to that company, and have a draft email ready for the human to review and hit send. That to me is not just it's high leverage because it adds ROI. It's not AI theater. And so every team needs, like, we're doing these hackathons right now, like tomorrow and Friday, where we're kind of locking down the company. And so all that to say is for each team, it's kind of defined out, and then we're going to help provide the resources to get there. But at the same time, you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? And there's a lot, I can sense resistance with people. Oh, I'm so busy right now, I'm so overwhelmed. But I'll tell you what, I don't know if you're seeing this, Bernard, but I have a lot of founders that message me and they're sick and tired of the overwhelmed, and they're just like, dude, you cannot be overwhelmed anymore, right? And my CTO was telling me that the other day. And so I know a lot of people listening to this don't want to hear this, but this is the reality. And so my whole thing is like, guys, I'd rather us not have to like go through this round of like cutting a bunch of people. I'm going to do what I can to bring all the people with us. And we're going to, that's why it's like weekly office hours mandatory, hackathons mandatory. We're going to like stretch them out. So obviously I'm very passionate about this stuff right now, but I think it's very important that we bring our people with us, Bernard.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think, I like to make the metaphor, right? It feels like we were basically plowing fields with, horse and bulls and stuff. And now all of a sudden, right, this tractor comes along, and that's scary, and people die because they jump in front of the tractor, and, it's this weird machine. But at the same time, it kind of feels like we are at this intersection of, okay, well, either you get in the tractor and you 10x, 50x your productivity, or you keep plowing the fields by hand and you get left behind. So
you know what's funny? It's not really funny, but so the Shopify founder was saying this, right? And I was like, oh yeah, this is actually true. If you went through 51 weeks of 2025, okay, 51 weeks, the year's basically done, right? But the week 52 was probably the most important one. That's when when everyone started jumping on this stuff. Like, and that was when people are on holiday break, right? And so in the world that we're in now, like, things are just changing every single day. And I don't know about you, but I'm more excited than I've ever been, I think, in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, with that excitement, I'm also scared and nervous, personally. I think that we've talked about this when I was visiting Miami that one time, but I think there's a lot of implications on traditional white collar work. And I'm feeling like there's going to be a lot of labor shortage, as a result of people adopting AI becoming a bunch more like productive. And I think I'm nervous and scared for, the parts of the world that, aren't able to adapt. And I don't know, what that means for them. And yeah, it's just kind of, I think, an increasingly more dystopian world that it feels like we're we're moving
Yeah.
towards, where, everything is, I think, like, throughout the era of the internet, for the most part, everybody abided by the "it is true until proven false." But given, the release of general artificial intelligence models across video, text, imagery, so on and so forth, we're now moved into a world where everything is, false until proven true.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's a lot of implications of, all of this that just does not feel great for society. And
Yeah.
so that's how I feel.
Well, I'll tell you what. So there's actually the founder of Grok with the Q, not the K, the chip company
Right.
that sold to Nvidia for 20 billion.
Mhm.
So I want to get your take on this because I was actually Neil and I were doing a podcast yesterday on this, and I think it's actually a contrarian view on the future. And then maybe after that we can kind of move into software as we see it, because a lot of software stocks are collapsing right now, and we can talk about how we look at software helping SEO and also marketing in the future, and kind of just we can shape the conversation around that. So did you see what the Grok founder said? You didn't, right?
I did not
Okay.
know.
So the context here is this. So again, sold his company for $20 billion, sold to Nvidia, did well. And he actually thinks that what's going to happen is obviously, this little this cup over here, okay, this is going to become, it's deflationary. The cost of buying this cup is going to go lower and lower over time because you're going to have robots building everything for you. Now, at the same time, because that's happening, working is going to become optional, right? So working is going to be optional, and people are going to opt out of working for other because they have a lot of abundance already, right? And maybe like, everything you need, you're going to be able to get now, which then leads to people are thinking, okay, a lot of people are going to be fired, which might be true in the short term, but in the long term, there's not going to be enough people to work on things because Elon actually said this piece. He thinks in the maybe the next 5-10 years or so, I think there's going to be job displacement for sure. I think there's going to be social unrest. Okay, I think as we go through this adjustment, but I think afterwards is hopefully we get to afterwards. It's going to be prosperity, right? And I think what's going to happen, because you and I, Bernard, like I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I was like, I don't want to work. I just want to sit on the beach and do nothing, right? But then you quickly realize, like after you've kind of crossed a certain threshold, you're like, no, it was never about that. It was always about being useful and doing something that you wanted to do. So I think we're actually going to create an abundance of high skilled people, entrepreneurs doing the things that they love doing. And that's what actually gets them to go all in, not doing jobs that they don't like doing. So that's a thought for you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of assumptions that model like builds on top of, but I would say for a sliver of people with high agency, with the setup, right? And when I mean like the setup, it's like, the hand that you got dealt for life, maybe. And there's this like Y Combinator post that like kind of lives rent free in my mind. You might have like read it, but it's like the one where it's like carnival. It's like, so it's like, if you got dealt a good hand, grew up in a middle class or upper middle class like kind of environment, then life is a lot like going to the carnival. You go, you pay the price of admission, and then there's those games that you play, right? And for upper middle class people, they can afford to basically throw the dart and try to hit the bullseye, like 3 or 4 times before, they have to give up their dreams and, go and work a normal 9 to 5, whatever, right? And then, he makes the analogy to say that, like, if you're born into a very great hand, ultra high net worth, so on and so forth, you basically get to just sit there and throw the dart until you hit the bullseye. And, that's just like the setup that you got. And then his last point was basically like, oh, and guess what? Everybody who got dealt the most like unfortunate hands, whether, just kind of being dealt into like a bad family dynamic or poverty or so on and so forth, like they don't even get to play, right? They're the ones working the carnival. And so anyways, I say that because when you say what that is, like what you see, or at least what the founder of the Grok sees, it's like, yeah, I see that the people who get to play the carnival, yeah, they have a lot more chances to play to hit the bullseye, but there is this huge percentage of people that don't even like get there because of the hand that they were dealt.
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is the people that didn't get to participate are now going to have more shots on goal to participate. I think I'm a big proponent of equal opportunity, not equal outcome, and we don't need to go into politics or anything, but that's how I see it, right? I think we're going to have more opportunity. I think more people are going to be able to see the light that it was always about being useful. I'm building something that you wanted to build to help other people. I think the world didn't allow for more entrepreneurship. I mean, everything around that is built by an entrepreneur, right? And so
Yeah.
that's what's exciting to me. So let's talk about software, because a lot of entrepreneurs built these software companies. You look at Snowflake, you look at Workday, for example, you look at HubSpot, Intuit. They're all tanking right now, okay? And so you and I mean, we're in software, right? And then maybe we can talk about how it relates to marketing, but it's just like a lot of people are tweeting now. It's like the death of software. Oh my God, SaaS is over, blah, blah, blah. What's your take on that? And what's your positioning going into this new world? Because, what was hard to build before, you actually have more abilities to build faster.
Yeah. So I think it's a great point. And I think the devil lies in the definition of software, right? I think that you have software and, I'll just say like Salesforce on the right-hand side and HubSpot and, these different really robust platforms with, very fleshed out ecosystems. And then you have software on the left where it's Screaming Frog or a email delivery checker. I use Neverbounce, or a sequencer, which is like Outreach.io, or whatever, which is software, but more of a like, okay, this just does one thing and it's more of a feature or an add-on, or whatever it is that you want to call it. So I say that in the sense that in the pure definition of, okay, it was just a feature, or, it did one thing really well, I do think a lot of that software is at risk because, like you've experienced yourself, Claude Code and these new AI like Lovable, so on and so forth, they're really good at building that thing that just does one thing. And you can basically just build it, use it, and then throw it away as needed. And so I think that class of software is at risk just because of how displaceable it is. But I think software at like the Salesforce and like platform level, I think is actually not like inherently at risk. I think that a lot of AI applications are going to be layered on top of the Webflow, right? The CMS, or the HubSpot or Salesforce, like the CRM level, right? Because there's actually a lot of meaningful data and like interaction that these platforms have accrued over time. Salesforce owns Slack, it owns, all the Atlassian, those kinds of things. And I think that class of software stands to benefit a lot from artificial intelligence, even though perhaps the markets are not clearly reflecting that. What do you think?
I think, to your point, systems of record are going to get more valuable. So like Slack, for example, I pull a lot of information from Slack, or HubSpot we use, or Salesforce, whatever it is. And that's why Salesforce is protecting a lot of the data that they have, because they know it's gold. I would just say that, I think, sure, a lot of people are like, you can just build Salesforce, you can clone it immediately. Like, think of marketers are making a bunch of product slop right now, right? They're just using this to vibe code a bunch of BS, right? And that's fine. Like, experiment with it, but just understand that a lot of stuff that you build, it requires maintenance, and you're gonna have to keep compounding on that software too. And the people who use Salesforce at an enterprise level, they can't afford to have any downtime or any issue, because that can cost them billions of dollars, right? And so I think there's going to be room for always going to be room for enterprise software. I think people are always going to also want to pay for customer success as well, like a managed service, that type of thing, which is why, I think I like where we're at right now at Single Grain, because we have the agency part. Like, people are always going to want people to kind of do the work. But I think from a marketing angle, I think, the ability, for example, what I did the other day, Bernard, one of my friends was talking to me about how he sources 8 and 9 figure deals right now. I'm like, how do you do it? Right. He's like, I just do this and do this. I was like, oh, I have an idea. Okay. I went into Claude Code, and I have a deal manufacturer now. So here's what it does. It pulls from all of my LinkedIn connections. It pulls from all of my Gong calls, all of my, my HubSpot calls, all of my emails. It's hooked into my Google Calendar as well. So it knows everything. I'm like, hey, okay. So, and it's also hooked into like a news source. Okay. So it sees who's raising funding, who are the hot startups right now, whatever. And I'm like, hey, who's connected to OpenAI right now? Who am I connected to at OpenAI? It lists 4 people. It shows the levels and it shows the angle that I should be attacking with, and then it shows the LinkedIn message and also the email message. Like, why don't I just give that away for free and collect leads from that? Like, I think as a marketer right now, if you're very creative, if like bringing this back to SEO, what are the things that you can create to give away in your niche, whatever it is exactly, and then just use it to collect emails, right? Drive traffic towards it. That's how I look at it. I mean, I also look at, I look at ClearScope, or I look at ClickFlow, for example. Like, what are the features that we can splinter off and give away to drive awareness, right? Because a lot of these things, like, everyone's just copying each other in terms of features. And so in my mind, it's like, how do you just make sure that I think the ultimate moat, people like to say distribution is the moat, but I like to say ultimately what matters is people like to say taste, right? So what is taste exactly? Taste is the things that you say or the things that you create. And in my mind, taste is a lot of it's designed, right? So
Yeah, no, I think that's a very interesting point. I guess from a marketing perspective, I think of that as like lead magnets. And yeah, I mean, engineering as a as a channel is always interesting. I think Ahrefs does this really well, right? They have like the plagiarism checker, they have the AI detection checker,
of course.
and this and that. And I think now more than ever, you don't need a growth engineer to make those things as much. But if you get on the Claude code, I think interesting things that people probably want to know are going to be, insights, like it's like, I think about the SEMrush sensor, but like, how is volatility within, say, citations, within the big sources, how's that playing out? Is Reddit on the up, down? Is Wikipedia on the up, down? I think that's interesting. I think, query fan out, there's a lot of already vibe coded to professionally coded lead magnets between, Mike King and Dan Petrovic, like where it just hits the API and it pulls back the fan out of queries that, a prompt has for ChatGPT or Gemini if they were to exist. Right? I think that these are good examples, right? If you're going to start thinking about vibe coding a lead magnet that, does some processing, I'd say more or less like what I'm finding with at least vibe coding, and you've touched on this, is that it's really about the data, right? Like if you have API access to data sources that either you own and it's proprietary to you, right? Like Gongs, the HubSpots, the Slacks, or it's proprietary enough and like not that accessible, right? Whether it's behind a paywall, like an X, which I think their API costs are really high right now. But that's value, right? You can take that and then you can have an edge over somebody who basically doesn't have access to, valuable and insightful data sets.
Yep. That's the major point. So it's like, what is the moat ultimately, right? And so one, I think it's taste, but the other piece is data. So if you were able to make these lead magnets and collect the data, so I'll give you another example. I'm messing around with we have the Gong MCP, model context protocol. Just look at these things, allow you to, these LLMs to talk to these tools, right? So Gong, which is our, kind of sales call thing. And then we have HubSpot CRM, and then we have Ahrefs MCP as well. And so what I just did was I just queried it. I was like, hey, why don't you just look at the last 6 months of sales data and then just see what are people asking for the most, and then also cross-reference that with Ahrefs to see what keywords are trending upwards, and then map out a bunch of keywords that we should be going after. So that in itself could be a tool. But here's the thing. If you're able to collect data around what people are looking for, you're going to see patterns in that. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all itself. I'm just giving you an example of a tool that you can make to collect data. That is going to be the thing that guides product development in the future. And that's going to kind of protect yourself and insulate yourself. And I think the key thing too has always been, it's the Bruce Lee quote, right? He fears the man that has practiced one kick, not 10,000 kicks, right? So
yeah, one kick 10,000 times rather than 10,000 kicks one time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it still comes down to really hyper focus. Like you like I can hype this up all we want. Bernard, we can hype this up all we want, but sure, Claude Code is powerful, but there's still a lot of blocking and tackling stuff you need to do within SEO, within marketing in general.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on this, I think, during last week's webinar, but I think a lot of it is like, how well are how well formed are your ideas, and, how good can you get the agent to execute on it is becoming more of the work that,
Yeah.
the humans are at least contributing to meaningfully, because the agents are the ones going around doing
Yeah.
what your bidding is, right?
Yeah. Maybe we can work towards closing off with this piece. I'm just wondering if you have any examples here. Like, there's good we go back to taste, right? What does taste mean exactly? So there's an example of a guy on he has a YouTube channel, and he is vibe coding till he hits 1 million. He's gonna stream until he hits $1 million. You see that one?
I have seen
Yeah.
that one pop up on my social media.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like, I was watching one of the videos yesterday, and this guy's like in his office, like dancing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He's
He's
like
like actually vibe coding,
yeah.
like yeah.
He's vibe coding, and like each of his streams like 4 to 6 hours or so, right? Like, that is a way to drive distribution, right? That is a form of taste because it's a little different. If someone's gonna do vibe coding to $100 million, like, I'd probably watch that too, right? I'm interested. And so to me, going back to SEO and AEO, like SEO and AEO, it has like the people that perform the best, it has been about taste. Even the spammers back in the day, they tastefully spammed their way to the top, right? They came up with new ways of doing things. The affiliate marketers were the most creative, right? I think more than ever now, that's going to become more and more important. And you gain that taste by experimenting with things and trying things that are kind of outside the limits a bit sometimes. But what do you think about Bernard? That Bernard, like, how
No,
would you
yeah.
taste?
That's I think that's right. And it's back to that adage, right? What is old is new and what is new is old. And I think a lot of the tried and true is being spammed and replicated to the nth degree.
Yep.
And I think as a result, what we're seeing the forefront of people pushing things in, hyper unique ways that are interesting and weird, and in that way shareable and viral, and that gets you link, it gets you publicity, it gets you eyeballs. And then I think one of the earlier points too is that I do think you have a great point in that now more than ever, the ability to create is being democratized in a way that we've never seen happen before. And so that kind of begs the question, right? If everybody can now create, like how do you stand out? And taste is, I think, a very core factor. Data, if you have access to interesting data that nobody else does, that's another factor. And then how you take these building blocks and spin it into something truly interesting is actually feels like it's out of left field, right? Like the guy who's dancing while vibe coding to $1 million. That's like one example. I've seen this like thing on where it's like a Claude instance that's like nurturing a tomato, and
What the?
it's like sold a tomato, and there's like a meme coin like attached to it.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
like but yeah, it like has like 12 different sensors, humidity, soils, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it will like add and like remove like sunlight and like air and like
What?
humidity. And it's like,
You
I
find
think
this on crypto Twitter?
yeah, it's it's to say people are taking these things and like they're applying very novel ways to using this ability to create
Yeah.
to their advantage.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that originality and that creativity honestly comes from trying, right? Trying new things, experimenting. You'll see once you start, dabbling with all of this, how, X could connect with Y, or Y could connect with 4. And then you get to these like strange and interesting outcomes. And then, in that way, you stand out and you're able to at least capture some awareness.
So last thought from you, like, where are you bullish about the SEO industry in general over the next 5, 10 years or so? Or are you bearish?
I guess it depends on what being bullish or bearish means. If we say being bullish is the fact that SEO will continue to be a large like driver of value and leads, I think the answer is yes, but not in the way that you would expect it, right? Like in the past it was traffic, but in the future it's influence, right? And so at the end of the day, us as human beings, whether we're chatting with an agent or in the farther future, you just have an earpiece in your ear and you're chatting with your own private like instance of like an AI model that like knows a lot about you, you're still chatting with an AI, and the AI still needs to A, have training data, and B, ground their responses with some sort of factual or credibility check. right? And in those worlds, I think that search engine optimization based content is going to evolve into just being training data for agents or validating data for agents. And that is going to be important, and it's going to influence what these like models respond with. If you say, SEO as we know it, sending traffic and all that stuff, then I'm very bearish, right? I think that you traffic is going to be, a thing of the past, and you really have to think about, SEO as a channel to influence AI models and not as a channel to get rank number one and therefore get a lot of clicks onto, your blog or product page. What do you think?
No, I think that's completely right. I think SEO has always been an evolution, and I think the ones that don't want to evolve are actually the ones who complain the most on X. But the ones that have always evolved, they see it differently, right? They see the opportunities, and they see that it's not 15 years ago. Maybe it was very, yes, Google was the only game in town, but now we talk about the everywhere game, right? Whether it's creating software or whether it's attacking YouTube or like if it makes sense going on Reddit, like there's all these different channels to attack because this, attention's so disparate, and so. I'm excited about the evolution because if it had continued to be the same thing over and over, it would have been boring. Like it was too easy to game already, right? Like people knew it. And so the game will always evolve over time. And those of you who are adaptable, who are always trying to learn, you're going to be successful. And so especially now that you have all these, I like to call these tools or weapons available to you, I think it's a very exciting time. So Bernard, I mean, other than people going to ClearScope, what else, where else should people go to find you online?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's, you could just search Bernard Huang, add me, follow me there. And yeah, I mean, ClearScope, we do webinars. We had Eric on last week, and just lots of forward thinking, really interesting conversations, especially as we find ourselves more and more in an AI assisted world, whether that's personal or professional. It's definitely, I think, time to sharpen the tools and really go out there and see, and try everything that's going on.
Love it, Bernard. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll definitely do this again. And someone asked in the chat too, if the replay will be available. You can just check out my YouTube Leveling Up with Eric Su.